There we go. Okay, so we can start with announcements. Does anyone have announcements that they want to share? Nothing. We have a webinar. Clean has a webinar with Tamara Ludley tonight on the En-ROADS Climate Interactive Simulator, which will be good. So we're hoping for a good turnout for that. And then after that, we also have some other really awesome webinars. On April 19th, we have a climate and mental health webinar, which is a topic that we've talked about a lot on these calls. And then I know some of the folks from UCAR have been advertising their events for the worldwide teach-in that's happening on March 30th, but we'll also be hosting a webinar that does not conflict with that. It's a webinar that Jessica Bean from Understanding Global Change is leading. It's clean and interdisciplinary resources for climate justice. So we're starting to get the word out about that. And I'll put the links to that in the chat. That's what's happening with Clean right now. Anything else for folks? Okay. Oh, Ingrid, maybe hand raised.
I just mentioned I learned today that this Friday there's a global climate strike. Somehow this hadn't like crossed my radar, but apparently it's worldwide. So we're having a group in Ithaca, and I assume lots of other cities are doing it.
And Ingrid, I don't think you missed out. I just heard about it too. So I don't. At least there hadn't been a lot of publicity. So
okay.
Gina, I guess I've got one. Last week I attended an LOI workshop or webinar from that 10 Strands was leading, and they have they shared a couple of weeks ago, I think they have a huge chunk of funding that they got to drive curriculum across the state, California. So there was quite a few people, probably about 45 attended, and there's a unique opportunity to potentially collaborate as groups to go for some of the funding, and it would be focused on California and building out a K-12 curriculum. And the way they have kind of organized it is by grade level. So there's funding available for each grade level, K through 12, and it's significant. It's like $200,000 for each grade band. And they really encourage collaboration. So if folks know, people that are interested in that idea, I think reach out to 10 Strands directly. They have another webinar next week that's a continuation of the one from last week, so it won't be a repeat, but the one from last week was also recorded, so you can get some background if you didn't attend. But I'm hoping that CRS will collaborate, will join with some others and develop out a project. We haven't figured out what we're going to do yet, but it was a good webinar.
Nice. It's always good to hear about other good webinars and opportunities that are happening. So thanks for that, Eric. Cool. Anything else from folks? Well, we can jump right into the presentation. Like I said, we have Jeannie from the Climascope Project who's presenting today, along with Liza and Meta. I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing anyone's name wrong, but thank you all for being here. And they're going to be talking about what the Climascope Project is. The Student Advisory Board will also be covered from the two students with us, and what this looks like in U.S. climate education terms. So take it away.
Thanks, everyone. And then I have Ahmed, who's a teacher in Brooklyn, will be joining us, but he's getting coverage, so he'll come at some point soon. Thank you, everyone, for having us. I've been a part of this group for about a year and a half. Eric invited me about a year and a half ago, and it's been a huge source of inspiration and support and guidance for me. So I really appreciate you all and giving me the time to present. So with me today are two students who've been working with me for about a year now. So Lisa, she lives in Portland, Oregon. She's a 9th grader. I met her, I don't know, 2 or 3 years ago when I was staff developing at a school in Beaverton. And then Meta is a 6th grader in Dallas, Texas. And I met her while staff developing virtually. And they'll talk about themselves a little bit more later. So my goal is to have like a 20 to 30 minute presentation. I'll give you a quick version of my story and a tour of the Climascope Project website, the framework that I'm developing out of a lot of the conversations I've had with people connected through Clean. Meta will walk you through like our process for curating resources. Ahmed will talk about his classroom and how he used the Climascope Project with his 6th graders in Brooklyn. Lisa will talk about the Climascope Project from the perspective of a student. And then I want to talk a little bit about how we're picturing kind of scaling up and get your feedback and thoughts. And then I'm picturing the last half as being feedback, discussion, and questions. So very quickly, I was a teacher for 8 years, first in Brooklyn and then in Newark, New Jersey. I was an English teacher. I taught middle school, and I was the writing department chair. So my kind of background is in literacy, is in reading and writing. About 8 years ago, I was hired at the Reading and Writing Project at Teachers College at Columbia University. So I became a staff developer, and my job is to like help run professional development, mainly for reading and writing teachers, although I've been doing more work with history and science and math teachers, grades 3rd through 12th grade. About 4 years ago, I read The Uninhabitable Earth by David Wallace Wells, and I was kind of motivated through fear to start doing everything I could to move the dial on climate change and climate education. And so I started pushing my organization to do more climate related work. And then in 2019, I formed the Climascope Project to try to help teachers and students infuse climate literacy, sustainability, environmental justice into their curriculum and teaching. So this language kind of first was a feeling, and then it was framed by Frank Neopold as like this problem of too much noise and not enough signal. And so one thing I set out to do in the first year was to kind of sift through all the noise and figure out how to create a tool that teachers and students could use to discern signal from noise. And so that's the first half of this is going to be around that tool. These are some possible lenses for feedback that you could give us. So we'd love feedback about the layout and design of the website. We'd love feedback around the content and structure and tone of this presentation. I think this group especially would be helpful in helping us think through the processes and systems for crowdsourcing, for vetting and updating digital resources. And the last kind of lens that I'd love your help with is thinking through how to maybe formalize some of the existing partnerships we have at a national, global, and local level. A lot of this thinking has been informed by conversations I've had on these Tuesdays, through the Aspen Institute, their climate action plan, and through a book that was recommended to me by Joseph Henderson in the conversations that we had, which was Teaching Climate Change in the United States. Okay, so when I go into school, I work in about 25 schools throughout the country, and the framework I present them with is this idea of climate literacy, sustainability, environmental justice should start with a core of knowledge and help students build knowledge. But if it's just left at knowledge, facts, and information, it can lead to despondency, eco-anxiety, and it does not lead to change. So I'm trying to figure out ways to help teachers build meaning for students, focus on solutions, justice, a sense of like interdisciplinary. I know I'm preaching to the choir here, but this is like kind of what I'm, especially for teachers who don't feel as comfortable with climate change and climate knowledge. So helping them and their students make meaning. And then finally, we want to try to get them to move toward a transformative approach by helping them create change in themselves, their households, their schools, and their communities. A lot of this thinking is around Emily Corin's work, who I also met in this group, around collaboration, self-efficacy, project-based learning. And I kind of try to focus my resources on these 4 categories laid out by the Aspen Institute of Educate, Adapt, Advance Equity, and Mitigate. So our big mission statement is we try to empower teachers and students to build knowledge, make meaning, and take action towards a greener, healthier, and more just future for everyone. And we basically try to do that in 3 ways: the curation of digital resources, which I'll show you in a second, professional development, and then local, national, and global partnerships. The first and the third one are what I'd love your help thinking through today. So let me just give you a very quick tour of the website that we've been building. This is the Climascope Project. And so when students land on this, they first have the option of like how old they are. So if you're a middle school student, everyone has 3 options to either get smarter, to make something, or to take action. So when you click on Get Smarter, you have a bunch of climate-related topics that you can build your knowledge around. So if you're really into fashion or clothing, you basically have a bunch of articles and videos and pictures and infographics and podcasts that you can listen to build your background knowledge. The color coding is for like green is easy, orange is medium, and red is kind of expert level. So you can get smarter about things. Once you've got smarter, you can make things. So if you wanted to like write poetry at the end of the unit, this is Ahmed's example, which he'll walk you through in a second. So at the end of a unit, kids are often asked to create some kind of project, and this gives them a few options and guidance for those projects. And then finally, we're kind of curating resources and examples and stories around actions that students can take, kind of starting with themselves and ever widening scopes of influence. So that is a structure. When we get to the discussion, I would love your thinking about like categories and hierarchy. We've been focusing mainly on the student-facing side, but I wanted to let Meta talk a little bit about herself, how she got involved, and then she's going to talk a little bit about the process we went through for curating these resources. So Meta, will you go ahead and take it away? And make sure you unmute yourself.
Hi, so my name is Maida and I'm a 6th grader in Dallas, Texas. I got really into climate change by just scrolling on the internet about a year ago. I knew climate change was a problem because that's what they told me in science class. But as I learned more and more about it, I realized that I had to do something. So one day I'm scrolling through the internet and I see kids my age who look exactly like me talking to world leaders. And the thing was, these world leaders listened. These kids showed me how big of a problem climate change was and that I could take action. So the Climascope Project felt like the very first form of solid action I've taken against climate change. And you can never take action on a problem if you don't know what it is. So the Climascope Project does exactly that in such an effective way. By providing climate education to one school, we are reaching hundreds of kids, and who knows what they do with that knowledge. So now let's talk about how we curate resources. When it comes to curating resources, we try to follow 5 main stars. The first star is accessibility. I cover the topics for the grades 3 to 5. Lisa covers the middle school topics, and Mr. Munson covers the high school topics. And when we're trying to find resources, we try to find content that has a specific vocabulary level and complexity so kids know exactly what they're looking at. The next thing we really want to focus on is representation, because we want to expose kids to lots of different people and let them know that they can take action too. And they should also know that climate change unfortunately affects only certain groups of people. that have had mistreatment in history. And we want to let them know that no matter who they are, they can take action. The next thing we try to include is engagement. We want the content to be interesting. So once kids see one topic, they want to just keep scrolling and learn more and more. Another really important thing is trustworthiness. We want our information to be accurate without greenwashing and misinformation. And finally, they should be solution-based. Climate change can be such a dark and heavy topic that can cause people to shy away from it. So we try to choose texts that have really brilliant people that show really fun and exciting visions for the future. And we have a lot of topics over a lot of grade levels, so we need a way to keep track of this. We have a spreadsheet with each and every topic, and they show all the types of media that we use, including photos, videos, articles, and infographics. And it shows how many of each type we've curated. And it's also a way to set goals for ourselves, because we can clearly see what we've done and what we have yet to do. And we can work to completing all of the topics.
Thank you so much, Meta. All right, so that's a little bit about our process. Ahmed, thank you for being here. I know you're teaching today, so I really appreciate you. Will you talk a little bit about robots and roaches and how you use the Climascope project to help your students create this?
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, thank you all for having me here. It's great to be part of this. In terms of my work with the Climascope Project, it was about a year ago that me and Cheney started speaking about the possibility of implementing the Climascope Project within my environmental health curriculum. And yeah, we got the ball rolling right away. And as a teacher, my first impression and sort of my exploration through the Climascope Project made me see that this is an opportunity for me to take a step back as a teacher and sort of like the lecturing method of teaching, especially about climate change, and sort of the implicit demarcation of resources that a teacher has on hand and that they can pass on to their students. So it allowed me to take a step back from that and really gave students autonomy. The website itself was, can be navigated with ease and was very accessible for my students, and allowed me to work with them individually based on their interests. And that was really the biggest thing for me, is that instead of me talking to them about the doom and gloom, about what Meta mentioned earlier, that her experience with learning about climate change and science was basically what are the problems that are out there and what are some possible solutions that scientists are working on. What the Climascope Project did was sort of like invert that equation from the I do, we do, they do to the you do and how can I help, and really taking a focus on after gaining basic knowledge that they themselves researched, what kind of solutions were they proposing, what kind of actions they can take. And as Cheney here is scrolling through, we ended up deciding as a class that we were going to produce works of art, poetry, writing pieces, pictures, photographs. And this is all based on the students collaborating with each other through the Climascope Project. But initially, of course, based on their specialized interest in, so they went down the rabbit hole themselves and followed whatever, crumbs they could find. And what ended up happening is that students started talking to each other about their different interests and finding common ground. And so a lot of this artwork is both individual and collaborative. And yeah, and that zine is the product of it all. And we decided to call it Robots and Roaches because our initial introduction into environmental health was we watched the movie WALL-E, the Pixar movie, And so that sort of was kind of like a springboard for them into using the Climascope project to create a product at the end.
Thank you, Ahmed. And yeah, and then a lot of these schools that have been creating some of these projects have then been submitting them and uploading them to the website, which hopefully like inspires other students and other teachers and give them some like examples and resources. Okay, so Lisa, could you talk a little bit about from like a student's perspective, why you think the Kaleidoscope Project helps you, but also like students your age, and yeah.
Yeah, of course. So first, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate all of you for being here today. My name is Lisa Kvetny. I'm originally from the Middle East, but I moved to America in 2014, so not that long ago. And I'm currently a 9th grader at Westview High School in Portland, Oregon. And there's a quick story to how I got into climate change, which I feel like is pretty interesting. I was in 6th grade in my science classroom as usual. It's a sunny day, which is rare for Portland, but I'm just sitting in that classroom and I'm all of a sudden hit with climate change. Like, yes, I've heard of it. We've all heard of reduce, reuse, recycle, but it's never really hit me how important it is or what people it affects. So I'm sitting here and everything hits me at once. That same day, I go up to my teacher and I tell her, I don't like this. I want to change. I don't like what's happening. Something needs to happen, at least at the school. And I was prior going to a middle school with thousands of people, like 2,000 to 3,000 kids. So I'm like, what difference can I really make? Without the climate scope, like students like me don't really have that option. And I had a really great teacher that was able to help connect me with so many resources. And with the help of my peers and with my teacher, we were able to create this environmental club. We set goals, we had meetings, and we truly did so much. And now that going into high school, having even more people and having so many opportunities, it's crazy to think how many students want to have a voice, how many students are inspired, but don't know where to start. And I think that's exactly how the Climascope is able to help all of us. So by student facing, we mean like the website is able to help students. It's curated for students. It's super easy to use. It's accessible. And it's inspiring to use. And I think that it's accessible and efficient because sometimes when you look at a website, it's so inspiring that it ends up being overwhelming. And I think the Climascope has a good like mix of that. It's able to have some inspiring details, but also helps you understand the topic more and do something about it. And I think having that sense of like organization makes it more approachable. And then if we go into the little nitty-gritties of the website, we see how it's organized and unique in a sense, because every student, every person has a different topic or interest that they are interested in or really passionate about. And I think also having it divided by grade levels allows students to really understand the information better. Like if you give a long text study, a case study to like a 6th grader, they're not really going to understand that information as well as having specific curated research ideas to them. And I think having that ability to have it organized and by section and by topic allows it to not be so overwhelming. Because if you just type in climate change into a website, into Google, for example, you're hit with so much. And the Climascope almost holds your hand and guides you through the entire process of thinking of an idea, thinking of what you could do about it, and then actually taking action. Having that like step-by-step guide allows students like me and other of my peers and friends to like have a better way to move along with the whole process of creating something. And then if we're going to a sense of audience, we are reaching thousands of people, thousands of students and teachers, and having a place like a website where everything's in one location, it allows for easy access and it's efficient. Because again, with the whole searching it up on Google, it's not so efficient because you're stuck and then you go into these loopholes, but having everything in one place efficiently is really nice. And then my last point would be the sense of community. Over the past year or so, we've created somewhat of a community. We have more people coming in. We're able to talk to more people and professionals, scientists, and whatnot. We're able to create this team. Right now, obviously, it's a little small, but we are quite mighty. We do so much, as Meta showed. We have this tracker. We do so much as a team. And over time, I realized, even with that 6th grade experience, I couldn't do everything by myself. I just couldn't start a club by myself. I couldn't. I needed resources, I needed a teacher, I needed a guide, and having a community, a sense, a website that allows you to work as a team, to collaborate, to have leadership is such a cool experience. And coming from just a student going into the world, hopefully soon, I'm able to experience a sense of almost not even a job, but a sense of teamwork and how everything works in like the real world. And I think even just moving beside the website, just having that experience is so valuable to me and to others. And overall, it's such a great website to just have everything laid out for you. Obviously, students can go from there and build on, just like Ahmed's classroom did. And I think it's just a really special way to have everything curated for you. Thank you.
Thanks, Meta, or sorry, thanks, Lisa. So the first question was like around how to help teachers and students create signal out of the noise. The second big question that I'm thinking about right now is once we have the signal, how do we amplify it? And so let me just talk a little bit about our thinking for ways to scale up. So we have all these topics that are curated around interest, hopefully things that kids get excited by. What I'm picturing is that you would have like little pods or teams made up of students, perhaps retired teachers, since most teachers don't really have the time to volunteer. We could maybe create a fund to pay teachers to be part of this. But that there would be a pod made up of teachers, students, and experts that could curate resources, like update, vet resources. I think similar to the process that Clean does, but not, I mean, I know there's like a very lengthy and rigorous process for the science resources, but I'm trying to think of some system where you could organize these pods by either action or project, by location, or by topic. And I would love your help thinking about that. The last thing about amplification, I have all these kind of people and connections that I've made at all these great organizations. I don't have a great amount of experience creating either formal or informal partnerships. But a lot of them are excited about the idea of the Climascope project, of like this kind of student-facing portal. But you all have much more experience in forming these relationships and partnerships. So I'd love your thoughts about that. This is the team we've put together so far. Some of these are volunteers. Some of these would be hired consultants, but they'd all kind of expressed interest either working for or helping guide the Climascope project. So I just want to, again, thank this group for allowing us to present. We would love to hear your feedback. Again, like these are the kind of the 4 big categories of feedback we're interested in, but obviously any thoughts you have would be super appreciated. We'd love to hear about your thoughts about the design. I'm trying to raise the funds to get it professionally designed, because right now it's just me through Squarespace. So any thoughts you have about layout and design, the content and structure of this presentation, processes and systems for vetting and crowdsourcing resources, or tips you have about forming partnerships, we would love to hear them. And then I will put the website in the chat. So if you have thoughts now, we would love to hear them. You might poke around the website a little bit. I'm going to put the link in the chat.
That was awesome.
Thanks.
Great. Yeah. Folks can feel free to raise their hands. And Jeannie, you can call on them as you wish. But I just want to say thanks for that awesome presentation. I'm so happy that we're getting you on a call and that we get to talk about this. I think I'm really inspired to see your collection of resources. Yeah, I agree. The tone is awesome. And what I think is unique about this site is that it is student facing, whereas our resources are more teacher facing. So that is definitely a big difference. And I really like how you, I I think one of the strengths of this is how you break it down for students and give them different options. So it's not just, here's an empty search box and, you know, go for it. It kind of
Right.
holds their hand. So I think that's really great about it.
Thank you. Eric.
Thanks, Cheney, Meta, Liza, and Ahmed. As far as the presentation goes, I don't think I've been on a thing call yet where we've had students represented at this level. So I really appreciate that your voices are right here. You know, Meta, that you're driving the 3 through 5 curriculum, and Liza, you know, telling your story and being an international, you know, migrant to the country and really engaging in sort of that story, that aha moment. And then certainly having Ahmed, a teacher on the team. Just the diversity, Janie, of the group that you've built is incredible, you know, from many different perspectives. So thanks for that. So I think, you know, this presentation is great. So that's just some feedback about that. And I think the project, the thing I kind of think about a lot is the ecosystem of websites like yours, and where does it fit in, and how does it augment what others are doing? How does it, it's okay to be redundant. You know, there's a lot out there now, but even better is synergistic. Like, how do we get things to work together and build off of each other and go to great places? So, and I think a lot of the conversations we've had over the past couple of years have been really changing this paradigm and getting into and sort of an action-based, solution-based mindset, and developing futures for the two youth on the, you know, honestly, like, so that it's really not doom and gloom. So that it's really about, we can create a future that we want to be part of, you know, and I think that's really important, that dialogue and changing that paradigm. And I think this work and the way you're going about it, I think you're hitting the mark on that.
Thanks, Eric. And yeah, Deb, I've coordinated a little bit with some of these. I haven't checked out regeneration. I'm obsessed with All We Can Save.
Yeah, We Can Save is most ethically aligned with what you're framing things as.
Yeah. So subject to climate is teacher-facing materials, and can be really helpful for a lot of different content teachers. Yeah, it's kind of the same. I'm trying to do like the same spirit, but much more from the student-facing side.
No, I think you're right. I think.
And I don't. What is regeneration?
So regeneration, and I'm not going to advocate for any of those, just to be clear, but maybe I'll advocate for All We Can Save. So regeneration is Paul Hawkins' next step project related to Project Drawdown. So Project Drawdown, I guess there's some internal issue. So he's the one who wrote the Project Drawdown book, and he wrote another book called Regeneration. And it's like very good to connect to from a solutions perspective, has a lot more justice inside it. I've heard mixed reviews about how the justice collaboration aspect of it worked. So mixed feelings about that. I have met with them. They are looking for partners to do much of the work that they're moving in the world. The nice thing is that they're like very financially connected and their work moves. So it is helpful to like leverage it in very particular ways, but you have to maintain ownership of the work that you're doing and the ethics you have inside your own work.
Mm-hmm. I mean, the regeneration one, I like the visual of like how the solutions are kind of laid out in that long.
Yeah.
It's a really beautiful representation of solutions.
Yeah.
Like in the
and they're looking for learning design partners right now, like in terms of like but historically how that's been is like how to push their stuff. And I'm like, that's not really partnership work, right?
Yeah, but that's interesting. Jen, oh, come on, from the Wild Center. Kretzer, yeah. So like I've been using some of the kind of youth climate summit
those are
frameworks for both K-5 and like 6-12, and this idea of like some kind of culminating summit that has some degree of like teaching, mitigation, justice, celebration. But that, I mean, just that might be a nice place for some teachers or students to go to for solutions that they could maybe implement at like a local or school level. They're always looking for examples of things that they could be doing, but that's a nice idea.
I'm sorry, I noticed James has a hand up too.
Oh yeah, Jim, go ahead.
Yes, so great compliments to all of you, Janie, Liza, Ahmed, and Neda. This is definitely something new and something needed, and well done. Among the things of I'm paying a little more attention. I paid more attention on the what you can do about it side. I did look at some of the others, but the breadth in which you're approaching. I mean, I guess one way to put it is, people can be overwhelmed by things, or they can be exhilarated by things. To take action on climate change, there's a million things to be done. And that can be overwhelming. But that means there's a million things to choose from to do. You can find your area, you can be creative, you have a lot of room for growth. It doesn't require 300 million Americans to be dedicated in this. A few thousand, a million, we're going to make, that's a movement. That's huge, so you're doing things. And I think that's kind of reflected in the different areas that you have. Totally great on things. And there's a characteristic of the climate education world. There's a couple of them. One is, it generally has been this way, and then often people try this and then they go out of it, is we give advice to teachers, we give them curriculum, but we don't support them. With students, even less, we don't support them. It's like that's up for the teachers or someone else to do it. We just give advice on what to teach. That's in general on it. And then I guess in one way is, our students in Climate Change Education.org, Mobile Climate Science Labs, and Climate Club DC, much of our activism over the years has been that students themselves are educators. They can use the science festivals and these events, and in school, they are fantastic educators. In fact, they're listened to more than teachers. But the climate education world generally has dismissed them as not important. They're not real educators. So our work, we've been accepted by the informal education world. In the science festivals and the big couple of events, our students are really welcome, but the formal side has been kind of dismissive. Now that we're moving much more into energy efficiency and doing STEM-based action, and we're accomplishing quite a bit by any standard, one of the things that I would bring in, and I think your site, what you're doing reflects this, is it's very important, if we're really going to be effective, that we're taken seriously. This isn't just kiddie projects. This isn't some, oh yeah, you've got some crayon thing and you're doing this thing and it's a nice idea and you're not really going to do anything. That's for the adults. You get your PhD and then we'll listen to you. We have to have this, allow the students and give support to the students, or not get in the way of the students, so they're taken seriously. They're quite capable of doing things that are real change. So I mean, that's the kind of thing that I'm seeing there. Yeah. The other one, sorry, I'm going on a bit, but what I would say is, the ability, if you all are bringing together these pods and having us share with each other the different pods, that is enormously valuable. The different pods to learn from each other. And I would say that for every pod, you're not going to get people doing it the same way. We're all going to be finding some different ways, but to sharing what works and what doesn't work is incredibly valuable. We're making DC more energy efficient. We have the Smithsonian's working with us. We're making the US Capitol more energy efficient. That's something the entire Senate and the Congress is not able to do. When I'm saying we, it's a group that's mostly students. I'm not saying to toot our own horn, but the idea that students really can make a serious difference. Treat us like we're not important at your peril, because we're going to do what you can't do. Mm-hmm. So great on what you all are putting together.
Yeah, thank you, Jim. I'd be interested in talking. So like, you have a bunch of students who are taking meaningful actions. Like, part of the idea of the website is to figure out a system to curate those kids and those actions in a way that is accessible to other students throughout the world, in a way that's fairly easy to sift through. And so maybe you and I could connect about maybe ways to use some of the things that your students are doing. But I would love to talk more with you about that.
You're great. The one condition is we just want to be one of the many pods.
Yes.
Lots of pods. The more the better. We have a lot to learn from you all. Okay.
Yeah. Yes, and I am trying to think through, I don't know if anybody has any thoughts about how to organize those pods, right? Like right now, let me just give you an example. Right now, I have this really crude system for like, if somebody makes something, like they make some artwork and they want to submit it, they could submit it through a Google form, but that I've heard of like networks called like the mighty networks. I'm trying to figure out of like a nimble, flexible system to help organize folks around like things that they're making and things that they're doing. And I haven't come across a good platform for that yet. And if Deb, it looks like you might have an idea.
Well, yeah, I was just thinking one of the things that I've tried to do is like leverage things people are already doing instead of new tools, because then it has dual purpose, right? It goes out broadly into the world and you can tag it into this space. So things would include like how you leverage different social media platforms and have that feed come up into this space.
Right.
And that can be extremely powerful because then you're creating much more entwined networks of people because they're seeing it through your space, but then they're also connecting out into the other broader social network. So, and I've seen it, I'm trying to remember the example that was most powerful, but it's a climate education space where people brought in like a Snapchat feed or something.
Yeah.
Pooled it under a particular hashtag and it all like landed in a web space, but it was dynamic and not curated per se.
Yep. That makes sense. Any other big thoughts, Gina?
Well, I don't want to squash this discussion in particular, but I was gonna ask if you have some kind of review process set up. I know that was the pods that you were talking about, but I think so with Clean, we do focus really heavily on we have specific reviewers for educators that serve in the education space and then scientific reviewers. And that is a multi-step process, but I think what could be really helpful for you is if you have like student reviewers, and I think maybe you had already listed that in the pods, but what's really helpful for us is to have some kind of expert. And I don't know, I know it sounds like funding is a difficulty. We pay them hourly, but
are you comfortable telling me how much money you pay them hourly? Like part of the funds that I'm sinking is to be able to pay teachers and experts. So
right, yeah, anyone here could sign up to be a reviewer and that information would be accessible to them. So I misspoke, it's a stipend. So we have two buckets. We have shorter resources, which are like half an hour to 45 minutes that we expect them to take to review the resource. And then we have a bucket that is longer resources, and that's like an hour plus. So I believe we set them up with anywhere from 5 to 15 resources, which is kind of a range, and it's about $40 per resource.
Okay.
So yeah, if there's some kind of there has to be some kind of carrot for them, I guess, and that
For sure.
That's obviously worked for us. But
and then do you also have, this is probably on your website, but do you have a protocol for what they like basically instructions? Because I would love to take those and adapt them for students and adapt them for teachers and adapt them for experts. But that's where I feel like Clean's expertise is. So if you could send me those, or just point me towards those resources, that'd be great.
I absolutely can. We have on our website, so we have folks at Carleton College who manage our website, and there's a whole back end to our website that's actually, it's like a form that someone created with code, and it has checkboxes and drop-down menus with all of the climate and energy literacy principles, and that's how we like align them basically. And I can send you. We could also set up maybe you and I should set up a call.
You and I set up a call and you just screen share with me and you just say like, this is what it looks like. I feel like that could be helpful.
I agree. That sounds good. Yeah.
Okay, any other big thoughts or ideas? There's one more thing I would love your ideas on, but is there anything that's coming to mind right now?
I feel like it would help if you to also have like a formal, in terms of the partnerships too, I've been thinking, that's something that Clean has been thinking about because we work with so many people. We're thinking about formalizing the process and just writing down expectations in order to be considered. We haven't done this yet, but we have a partners page on our website and it really needs to be organized, and formalizing it in a way that says, in order to be considered a partner, you need to, you know, be a member of our network, come to calls, do this XYZ in order to be considered like a collaborator. So some kind of formal process. And we do have a page on our website, but that might be a good starting place for that too.
That's a good starting place. I mean, the other thing I'm thinking about for partnerships, and I've is thinking about, so I'm like, you know, I have a whole list of funders and foundations that I'll be approaching in the next 2 months. And I know that like partnering with other nonprofits and thinking about like shared goals or like shared money that we can be working with. Like, I know that would be helpful. And like Jen Kretzer, I think she's really good with, I've been told she's really good with grants. She kind of like mentioned that to me, like if you can kind of bundle different nonprofits together and think like what could be a shared goal that we could work towards and like basically split the funds. Like that's another way I'm thinking about formalizing these partnerships, and to create some like shared vision and shared benefit from a grant or from a fund.
Yeah, can I speak to that, Jamie?
Yeah.
So partnerships are definitely the way to go. I had a call this morning with Environment and Climate Change Canada. I'm Canadian for those of you who don't know. Anyway, so and they're basically trying to move everything in that direction with partnerships for a lot of their funding streams, which is really good to know. And also, I think in the US, we're starting to see more of that. So we just got a grant with the Deep South Center for Environmental Justice as a collaborative effort between things. And so like anytime, and it doesn't have to be a lot going to any particular partner, like you don't have to think of it as half-half. Those are open conversations to have, because I think especially all of us here, we want to see the work move. And so like whatever helps make that happen, great. So for example, like Wendy and myself, and I'm not even sure who else on this call, like we have the PhD behind us and like the big research, you know, learning kind of collaboratives, that things, use it, like put it on your grant and like pay us $10, like great, we're collaborating, you know, so like use it however it's going to help you. I mean, let us know before you use it, but like use it. Okay.
Yeah.
And so I definitely encourage that, because it does make more, and I review a lot of grant applications too for the NSF and others, and like seeing that come in as a well-rounded kind of implementation effort, it's like totally want to fund those puppies.
Okay. I might want to have another follow-up meeting with you just to strategize a little bit. Let me show you one last thing. So we all know that organizing resources around location is really important. And so like one way, so I've started to think about this for teachers, like, and this is the teacher facing side, which is right now just a container. There's like nothing really behind a lot of these things. But eventually like kind of figuring out ways to organize teacher resources based on like approach, content area, grade level, like local partnerships, their location, their role, their topic, and like different, like this is kind of how I'm thinking about the hierarchies for teachers. But when you click on location, the idea would be that like you'd have a bunch of different resources that are, you know, and again, all these things, like they don't have anything behind them yet, but Teach for All just hired a global lead for climate education, and they're really interested in like curating resources, and they have like people on the ground working on climate change in each of their different, they have like 120 different countries that they're working in. But this idea that you could have some resources organized by location for teachers feels important. And then the other idea is like, I just started doing this with a few teachers that I'm working in this sustainability think tank, but organizing resources around like organizations. Like a big part of good climate education is helping teachers make partnerships with local organizations. So I don't know if you have thoughts on like this idea of organizing materials based on location, that would also be helpful.
One I would say, so I'm going to just come from our experience. It doesn't mean that it's the right experience, or it's not the only way to do it, but there's definitely always the thing of be ambitious, but don't be too ambitious. Don't.
I know, I need help with that. Yep.
Be careful on what you do, because, and as Deb pointed out, don't try to redo what others have already done. So it's very careful, know what others are doing, and use those resources. I mean, we're in California, the Bay Area in particular, we're in Washington, D.C. and Maryland. That is plenty to do. You know, for us, that's a lot to try to get location specific things for each part of the country. Where we're not is something we don't do, right? That we will connect with others. But I mean, that's actually one thing we're going to you, or we go to Deb, is we want to connect with what's going on in other parts of the country. But yeah, it's a real thing of be comprehensive, do a lot, but don't get all trying to do everything.
Yeah, and I need help with that. Yeah, I'm constantly like trying to prioritize and focus. But yeah, the idea is less that we would do it, but we'd set up the container for it. And we would set up the network of teachers who would, and a kind of protocol for gathering these resources, but it wouldn't be on us. That it wouldn't be on us to do it.
I'm going to keep this one brief, but this is if you're interested and your group is interested in things of when you're talking about money, when you're talking about funding, this is advice I've had for a long, long time because of this our experience. When you're looking for money or looking things, you want to be aware of if you do anything effective in climate change and energy, you're going to be approached by the fossil fuel industry. They are going to be offering you money and they're going to be doing a deal. You may not know that that's who they are, but they're doing it. And you want to, you know, I can't tell people don't do that, but no, there's a price to be paid. And are you willing? You want to like study what has been the price others have paid when they've taken it, because most of our field takes money from the fossil fuel industry in one way or another.
Yeah.
So just be aware of that. If you want money, that's where you're going to get it. But I usually find out is you're pretty much going to not do anything after that.
Right. That's helpful. Okay, I want to wrap up and thank everyone. Oh, I do a lot of work in person in Texas and in New York, which is lovely, but it's pretty like carbon intensive. And so I moved to California about 1.5 years ago, and I'm trying to build up more clients on the West Coast to do like in-person staff development support, professional development. So if any of you have connections to schools on the West Coast in California that might be interested in some of this, I'm already starting to build up a good amount of clients, but I'd like to have to get on a plane less to make money. And so let me know about that. All right, everyone. Thank you so much. Lisa and Meta and Ahmed, thank you all so much for being here. Yeah, Lisa, why don't you drop your email address? If anybody has questions for Lisa, you can either email her, you can email me. And Gina, thank you for organizing this and letting us present today.
Yeah, I think everyone's really excited about the direction that you're going in. I know, I can sense it feels very overwhelming, but I genuinely think everyone on this call thinks you're going in a very good direction. So great job and super, super awesome presentation from the students as well. We're so happy to have you.
Yeah, thank you so much. It's hard to make time to be here, Ahmed, especially you're like literally in school right now.
Yeah.
And any tips on pinning down Frank? I was really hoping Frank would be on this call, but I know he's crazy busy.
Yeah, I have advice on that. So
Okay.
I tend to be in spaces with Frank like 5 times a week because of the stuff we're moving in the world right now. So if you need something from him and you can't get a hold of him, let me know and I can
Okay. I basically want to give him a version of this presentation and get some tips and connections from him. And
it was recorded.
It's recorded, but no, I mean, it takes so much energy and effort to go back and watch these.
I can sit with him. Like we're going to be in conference spaces together for the next 3 weeks on a number of different fronts.
It's also nice, like this was a little bit of a dry run for our presentation. And so it was just a good rehearsal. So thank you all so much.
Very good. Thank you for all your time on this.
For sure. All right. Thank you, Lisa. Thank you, Meta. Thank you, Ahmed. I'll talk to you all later.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.